their high-level takeaways were that GPT-4's quality is now comparable to junior to mid-level translators, but lags behind senior professionals. We're back with a Slater pod full of news over the past 2 weeks since we last podcasted. Hello, Esther.
Hello, Florian.
So, yeah, it's been 2 weeks. Last time we recorded, maybe more than 2 weeks. November 15th was the last time. So now we are back and packed agenda. We're going to talk about AI content generation, GPT-4 versus human translators, episode 782. New bosses in town. M&A news. You're going to walk us through a number of deals that happen in the industry. I'm going to talk a bit about big tech language launches or launches from big tech companies that have an impact on the language industry probably further down the road. And then briefly about what Straker's results may tell us about the general state of the translation market globally. Yeah, we had a great SlaterCon remote last week. Great panels, loved everything. And of course, particularly was interested in what HeyGen had to tell us about, the avatars and the multilingual options that they're launching. So very, very interesting. I think the audience liked it as well. Now, we can announce the dates for SlaterCon 2025. Finally, we might have done this in the past, but let me reiterate this. So March 18th of March, Tuesday, is SlaterCon remote. Then we're returning to London on Friday, the 23rd of May, Silicon Valley, Thursday, September 4th, and remote November again on Tuesday, November 25th. So full lineup for conferences next year. And how do you think about recording more podcasts this year, Esther?
Yeah, well, let's do one more. Why not? Close the year.
Okay, Christmas pod. Talk about Christmas-related language industry news. We have one more scheduled with Safe AI, the Safe AI project, and then we can record another one. So stay tuned. But again, first, so much to talk about. So obviously, we also have to test how AI creates content because we're partially in the content creation business, right? We're trying to summarize and give bullet points and podcasts and record articles that are relevant. And so we started to look into how we can create, how we can use AI, ChatGPT and a couple of the other things that are out there to create AI created articles, but it's really, really tricky. So it kind of shows the limitations of these models, still super, super tricky. So we try to feed it kind of URLs and ask it to write a useful piece. We have this daily subscriber newsletter. There's a ton of content in that. And so we try to feed the AI this newsletter and then have it write an article. Continues to be fairly lame. Super hard, particularly to get rid of the PR terms like leading and revolutionary and things like that. It's very, very hard.
Is that even if you prompt it to say sort of, I don't know, in terms of tone or in terms of style, remove anything overly favorable or overly subjective or something?
The prompt is now like, I don't know, it's like half a page or a page long. Yeah, we had so many cycles here. We try to prompt, and it's kind of breaking from time to time. We try. I think we're close to it. We give it another week or so, and then let's see if it's something we can publish. Probably we'll start with a subscriber article, and then we'll talk to the subscribers and check if they find it useful. But yeah, will be interesting. But just generally kind of reality check, not quite there yet. Now, the tool that we're using for this, of course, GPT-4 or ChatGPT, is also continually being tested for translation, and there's a ton of research that's still coming out. And adding to that list of research is a study led by researchers. I'm going to have to read this off. So, China-based, the Westlake University. I think Westlake. It's got to be in Hangzhou because the Westlake is in Hangzhou. It's one of the most famous scenic tourist spots in China. So that's Hangzhou. Now Hangzhou is where Alibaba is. So there's a ton of probably AI and language AI talent in that part of the world. Beautiful, by the way. You got to go there. Westlake in Hangzhou. It's kind of a day trip from Shanghai. Anyway, so I'm rambling. China-based Westlake University, University College London, University of Cambridge, and then Landbridge. That's not a university, but that's the China-based LSP. So they benchmarked GPT-4's MT performance against human translators. And what did they find? I mean, I encourage everybody to go to the actual paper and read it. But basically, their high-level takeaways were that GPT-4's quality is now comparable to junior to mid-level translators, but lags behind senior professionals. Well, we kind of knew that. I mean, we've been saying for a long time that if you're, quote unquote, just a translator or a mediocre translator, you're probably not going to beat any of these systems anymore.
And this is in Chinese, yeah? Or Chinese, English, English, Chinese only?
You are right. It's the assessed translations across 3 language pairs: Chinese English, Russian English, and Chinese Hindi.
So all Chinese source, okay.
Yeah, so basically 2 pairs involving Chinese and 1, Russian English. Also, Chinese Hindi, interesting because it shows that Chinese is now, highest resource language. So, we're going not just from English, but Chinese is kind of a pivot language there as well. So yeah, they found what I just said, junior to mid-level it reaches that level, but lags behind senior pros. And they say that it produces overall literal translations, especially in technical domains. Yeah, I see that too. Not too many hallucination errors across the language pairs. Weaknesses in grammar, named entity recognition, which causes lexical inconsistencies. Maintains consistent quality across all languages, including low resource pairs, which is interesting. And then, yeah, again, those key limitations, overly literal translations and the lexical inconsistency. Another paper adding to that pile of papers that are comparing various AI systems versus the good old humans with all their creativity and expertise. Now, there's another paper. No, it's actually not a paper. It's according to the AP, Associated Press. They're saying that that the same system or another tool from OpenAI, Whisper, that transcription speech to text, is actually hallucinating, and that's causing problems in the healthcare system. There is a tool that the AP looked at called Nabla that's powered by Whisper. And that's been used for like 7 million medical visits in the U.S. so far. So there was a kind of a general dust up in a number of online, media outlets that they say that Whisper generates hallucinations, fabricates content. That this tool is actually now used by 30,000 clinicians, despite OpenAI saying, "Hey, don't use it in high risk domains like healthcare." So some of the issues are like deletes original audio, prevents transcription verification. It particularly affects vulnerable groups like deaf people, non-native speaker. And then multilingual transcription increases the hallucination risks. Yeah. And then higher error rates in speech with pauses, aphasia patients. Now I'm reading this off. What is aphasia patient? What's aphasia?
I'm not going to get this completely right, but I think it's something to do with, it's like a neurological, like brain damage, where it affects your speech.
So we are here now on the website of the National Institute of Deafness and Other Communications Disorders. Aphasia is a disorder that results from damage to portions of the brain that are responsible for language. For most people, these are on the left side of the brain. All right, following a stroke or head injury. So, all right, so hallucinations then, basically include false medical details and inappropriate commentary. Yeah, not great. So don't use these tools in these high risk scenarios, and
or maybe have somebody check.
One of the many.
Some human in the loop.
Check, yeah. Some human in the loop, indeed. And of course, again, like multilingual transcription increases the risks, and translation would increase it again. All right, now let's go to new hires, new bosses in the language industry. 3, starting with the biggest one. Tell us more.
Yeah, it seems to be the season for new hires in the language industry. So we have new CEOs being appointed at, currently 4 companies that we've picked up on. First of which would be RWS, of course, the UK-based super agency, which announced the appointment of Benjamin Faes. Sound familiar?
Now, that's an interesting name. How is it spelled, Esther?
F-A, or you mean Benjamin? Or F-A-E-S.
Hey, that's like me. Great. fellow Faz
No
joining
relation.
the language industry. No relation. No, it's quite a rare name actually. So yeah, welcome, Benjamin.
Yeah, so Benjamin takes over will be taking over as CEO. He's currently CEO designate, and he's expected to take up the role towards the beginning of January, around 6th of Jan, obviously following a handover from the current CEO, which is Ian L. Mokadem. People may remember that his departure was announced back in October. Ben, which I'm not just making up a sort of, nice, cozy nickname for him. That is how he was referred to in the press release. So we can comfortably call him Ben, has 25 plus years of experience, including he was the managing director of France at AOL. He also launched the monetization of YouTube across Europe for Alphabet, which is quite, impressive, and held a series of leadership roles for Google in EMEA. He was also MD of Google Cloud for Southern Europe and emerging markets. So yeah, quite an interesting, accomplished background there.
More than a decade at Google, right? So tech CEO. Interesting, very interesting.
Techie.
Monetization of YouTube. We can monetize YouTube now.
Yeah, we should ask Ben for some tips.
We hit the metrics. We got an email a few weeks ago. Yeah, I can ask him, hey, how do I best monetize it? We can launch some ads in here. All right, so welcome, Ben Faz. Glad to have a fellow Faz in the industry. So where else were new bosses or directors appointed?
Where else would be Sorensen? So this is the communication provider for the deaf and hard of hearing, as well as language translation services. Based in the US, Sorensen appointed Page Alves, who is the current chairman of the board. He is now taking over as CEO, replacing the current CEO, Jorge Rodriguez, who has been CEO since 2021. Jorge will act as a board advisor after the transition. Obviously has in that time since 2021 overseen some quite crucial developments at Sorensen, such as its majority sale to investment firm Aerial Alternatives back in 2022, and then subsequently the acquisition of CQ Fluency in 2023.
You're right. I forgot that. The CQ Fluency deal. That was a big deal.
I think it took a while for it to be announced, which may be why it went sort of somewhat under the radar in some areas. Page has more than 30 years. This is the new CEO. He has spent more than 30 years as an executive in telecommunications, telco. Most recently, he was chief sales officer in Sprint Corporation, and he also serves as a board member of Aerial Alternatives, the investment firm invested in Sorensen. So there we go.
Keep going.
And
one more.
Yes, I shall keep going. Two more. We have Blend. Yeah, it's all happening in December. I don't know why this is the time to announce new leadership, but here we go. So Blend, the Israel-based language service provider and technology company, Yoav. Ziv is the new CEO that's been appointed at Blend, who will be taking over from Yair Tal. Yair, who we've had, I think, on many different sort of SlaterCon remote presentations and various things, has led the company for 5 years. Yair also oversaw Blend's rebranding. In case people remember, the former name of the company was 1 Hour Translation. He also completed 2 acquisitions with the company of Manpower Language Solution earlier in 2024, and prior to that, GM Voices, based in Atlanta. That was in 2021. He also led Blend to profitability. Yoav, so the incoming CEO, has a background in leadership roles with Amdocs, Qualitest, and Checkmarks. And Yair will move on to transition to a board and advisory role. So congrats to all involved there.
Congrats to Yoav, and standing invite to join the pod. So once
anytime.
A little bit more established in the role, usually takes a couple of weeks, month, then please join the pod.
Then we have Gridly. So over in Sweden, this is a content management platform and TMS. Gridly has appointed Anna Albinson as CEO to replace Christopher Nilsson. So this is a company that offers localization sort of as part of, as a big part of its offering, which is mostly focused around gaming and supporting gaming companies with their content and localization needs. So Christopher is the co-founder, I should say, of Gridly, founded in 2022. He founded the company with a game developer and serial entrepreneur called Matthias Wennerholm. And Christopher will now step into the role of Chief Product Officer. So he obviously remains in the company, focusing in the future on product strategy and AI. Anna, meanwhile, the incoming CEO, this is her first experience in localization, according to the press release, but she does have a personal connection to gaming. So, as most people seem to do who work in the gaming industry, either sort of massive game fans or some other, I think in the press release she was talking about being a gaming mum to a teenager. So her prior experience is focused on business development and SaaS, with her most recent role being as CMO at an IT company called Avoki. And she also served as CEO of Whisper Group. So part of the role moving forward will be to now expand Gridly's reach beyond gaming companies, so into other sectors such as medtech, edtech, and other SaaS products.
Seems like a place on this planet where people are into gaming, because this I just looked up their LinkedIn page and they're in Helsingborg, which is a little bit north of Malmö, which is where, and I'm bringing this full circle here, Esther. So where, I went to NTIF 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And during the networking kind of reception, I was talking to somebody who used to be a hardcore World of Warcraft gamer. Also, a woman, female. So seems to be a place where people are really into gaming. All right, Gridly. Welcome, Gridly. Welcome, Anna Albinson. So let's move from new hires to, it's one acquisition and one giant fundraising, right? So first we had our friends over at Teleperformance, who own LanguageLine, acquire a company called ZP. I gotta confess, I didn't have ZP on my radar. The full name is, I think, ZP Better Together. So tell us more. This was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal. But again, I mean, I hadn't heard of the company ZP Better Together either. But as you said, it's a big deal. So the purchase price was $490 million, so nearly $500 million. And that was based on ZP's, I think, forecast revenues in 2024 of $230 million. Purchase price of more than 2x revenue, or 2x 2024 revenues there. ZP, so maybe the reason we haven't heard too much about them, so not sort of bang in the core of translation localization. They provide remote interpreting services, but it's more so servicing the deaf and hard of hearing community, both through video, phones, and mobile applications. So that would be, what they're doing. And it will be folded into, so ZP now, you mentioned LanguageLine, obviously, as being owned by Teleperformance. So LanguageLine itself is already housed within Teleperformance's specialized services division. ZP will now be folded into LanguageLine Solutions, is what we understand, while the president and CEO of ZP, Sherry Turpin, will join the executive leadership. So the existing or former owner of ZP is a private investment firm called Kinderhook Industries. That name may or may not be familiar to our listeners, but Kinderhook is the former backers of Stratus Video. Again, a name that doesn't exist anymore, but it was sold, Stratus was sold to AMN Healthcare in 2020. For actually sort of a similar price. I think it was $475 million at the time.
Good for Kinderhook. So
they found a sweet spot, I think.
They found a sweet spot, buying things in the healthcare and interpreting space and selling it. We don't know how much they paid originally for ZP, but I'm sure they made a decent return. Now, a decent return, I'm segueing here, is going to be, not easy to deliver for the team at Writer.com, because they raised $200 million in a Series C, and apparently that valued the company at almost $2 billion. So that's a gigantic valuation to have to grow into. And that challenge lies with somebody we know well, May Habib, who actually joined us at, I think it was our very first US SlaterCon back in 2017. Oh my God, that's so long ago.
So long ago that I wasn't even there.
You weren't even there. Okay, there you go.
Right.
So yeah, that was SlaterCon New York back in 2017, where where the company was still called Cordoba, and then went through a number of iterations, and now it's Writer.com. Obviously, amazing domain. So yeah, tell us a bit more if there's anything else to add, or maybe I just rattled through all of it already.
You've done a pretty good job there, overview wise. But yeah, it's an enterprise generative AI startup, as you said, now called Writer.com. Writer has a full stack AI platform. It also has a proprietary LLM called Palmyra, and that helps. It progressively learns terminology. So from, for example, a client's marketing content and how-to articles. So that would be a feature of the platform. The clients of Writer can also build customized applications on top of Palmyra, and then also generate and translate content in more than 30 languages. So as much as it's not just translation, translation is obviously a key feature of the platform.
Let's go to big tech. A couple of things. Amazon, Microsoft. First, Amazon just had their AWS conference called reInvent, and AWS is the cloud side of Amazon, and that's the whole thing where half the world is basically hosted on AWS, and of course now they also want to do AI and do a lot of AI. And then I want to talk briefly about Microsoft's new translator. But let's see if we can spin up this presentation here. Bear with us for a second. I'm trying to share this for the people that are watching on YouTube. So we're going to play this, and it's going to be on YouTube.
Well, the first thing is the team is going to be working really hard over the next year on the second generation of these models. But I also have a couple things that I thought I'd give you a sneak peek into. The first is that in the Q1 timeframe, we anticipate giving you a speech-to-speech model, which will allow you to input speech and get speech back very fluent, very fast.
There they are, clapping.
Applause.
And then around mid-year, we're going to give you an any-to-any model. So this is really multimodal to multimodal. So you'll be able to input text, speech, images, or video, and output text, speech, images, and video. This is the future of how frontier models are going to be built and consumed. We're really looking forward to giving this to you.
I'd like spontaneous applause during my presentations. That's that's got to be nice.
Not that we're announcing any foundation model, any to any. So I don't know, anybody who has an idea what any to any could mean for the language industry, please let us know in the comments below, as they say. I don't know, so you take a picture in Chinese and then, I don't know, you have an avatar speak the content or something. It sounds very, frontierish. But long story short, Amazon kind of also pushing very heavily, of course, into this Gen AI. Want to own, I think, even like from the chip level up to the models to then the applications, and now hoping, of course, that people are going to build on it instead of all these competing models. Now, we didn't find anything specifically related to translation in the Amazon's communication or interpreting, but there was a post in the Amazon kind of help kind of QA center where somebody was asking what languages are supported in Amazon, and then they said that this means these models can process, understand content in all these languages for tasks like summarization, translation, content classification, etc. I mean the usual thing, right? These things do all kinds of tasks. Now a bit more focused would be Microsoft's announcement that they are launching the Microsoft Translator Pro app for speech and document translation, particularly for speech. That's obviously interesting. Supports real-time and offline speech translation in multiple languages, so you don't even need internet. And then all kinds of other things. So yeah, interesting. The big tech, they continue to launch. Obviously, the industry, like the network industry, continues to try to innovate on top of what's essentially then commoditized if a company like Amazon or Microsoft launches it. So very interesting. One of these companies that is trying to innovate on top of all this is Straker, our favorite New Zealand. Asia Pacific or Australia or New Zealand centered LSP.
Listed company,
of course. That's why we said, we get all this.
No favorites.
Great information. And they just published their half-year results. Said solid and strongly positive adjusted EBITDA, about $1 million US. Was up 17%, but down. It was up from the second half of 2024, but down compared to the previous corresponding period. Same kind of for revenue. Decreased actually a little bit. Decline was a more moderate 7% this time, though. But on the bright side, gross margin remained exceptionally strong at just over 67%. That's really high. I mean, I remember back in the LSP days, we had like 50, 55% maybe. So 67 is really high, and is up from 63.8 the prior year. So, let's talk a bit about the factors that they said were driving the results, because it's always a little bit indicative of kind of the industry as a whole. So overall subdued market conditions, we kind of know that in the kind of the core translation business. They additionally had some non-renewals of 2 big European Union contracts, which they may have not been super keen on anyway. They also said that they're, of course, pushing to tech to, lower costs and expand margins, which you're now seeing is happening a little bit for them. They're saying they see softer revenue from core translation services. So they said that translation volumes continue to grow, but the revenue from that work is decreasing. So, more volumes, lower price, overall less revenue, which is, kind of a key KPI / metric for the entire industry. Now, don't want to go too much into detail, but they are launching kind of a new suite of products that they're trying to do subscription, like generate subscription revenue for, like meaning more tech, right? Subscription revenue, tech, obviously, is what everybody's trying to chase. They launched something called Verify.ai that validates AI created translations for accuracy and quality. Yeah. So thanks as usual, for all the information that they're giving us. And, I hope you still find use in being a publicly listed company. At least the shares popped. I think they kind of trended down. Were quite undervalued potentially even. And now they popped by about 60-70% after this news. So it seems like some investors regain confidence. All right. Thank you for this great episode, and we hope to be back before Christmas again with another news episode, but definitely with a guest episode that we'll be publishing in about a week. So yeah, cheers. Take care.